Iroquois women could vote, divorce their husbands, own property, and hold political power in the 1500s, centuries before European or American women had any of those rights. And when founding fathers were designing U.S. democracy, they studied the Iroquois system but deliberately excluded the parts about women's equality. Ready to find out how indigenous women had more legal rights 500 years ago than American women would have until the 1900s? In Iroquois society, women owned all property, including homes, land, and crops. Men moved into women's homes after marriage, and if a woman wanted a divorce, she could simply place her husband's belongings outside and the marriage was over. No courts or male permission required. Clan mothers held enormous political power in the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. They selected the male chiefs, could remove chiefs who weren't serving the people well, and had veto power over declarations of war, meaning men couldn't start wars without women's approval. Women controlled the food supply through managing agriculture and food storage, which gave them economic leverage and ensured their voices were heard in political decisions. You can't ignore the people who control whether your community eats. Children belonged to the mother's clan, and family lines were traced through women, not men. This matrilineal system meant women's family connections determined social status, inheritance, and political relationships, the opposite of European patrilineal systems. European women in the 1500s, 1800s couldn't own property once married. Everything became their husband's under coverture laws, couldn't vote, couldn't divorce without extreme circumstances, and had almost no legal rights separate from their fathers or husbands. When Benjamin Franklin and other founders studied the Iroquois Confederacy as a model for American democracy, they adopted the federal structure and some governmental ideas, but completely rejected the Iroquois practice of women holding political power and property rights. The U.S. Constitution, ratified in 1788, gave voting rights only to white property-owning men. Women couldn't vote until 1920. And married women couldn't get credit cards in their own names until 1974, showing how far behind American law was compared to Iroquois women's rights from centuries earlier. European colonizers saw Iroquois women's power as proof that indigenous societies were uncivilized, because in their worldview, women having authority was backwards. They used women's equality as justification for calling indigenous governments inferior. Suffragettes and early feminists in the 1800s actually studied Iroquois women's rights as examples. Matilda Joslyn Gage wrote about Haudenosaunee women's